We got a lot of friends on here. This is great. I feel at home.
Wow. Well, I see a few. Chip. I see a lot of people I don't know. So I'm so excited. Welcome, everyone.
Both, exactly right. Look at all the new Yaleys. Thank you for joining us.
This is awesome.
Exciting.
Go ahead and get started, Andrew.
I hope everybody can turn their video on so we can see everybody.
All right, so I'll start. Is everybody ready? Okay, well, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the 2021 Assembly and Convocation session on best practices for nonprofit governance, Yale Constituency Group Revitalization and Organization. My name is Andrew Burgee from the Yale College class of 1987, and I'm a board member of the Yale Alumni Association and the Yale Alumni NonProfit Alliance. It's my pleasure to introduce both Rachel Littman and Elise Chapman, who will be our speakers today. I must say this was a difficult task to pare down the intros and bios properly to reflect the accomplishments of these two very accomplished colleagues. So I apologize for omissions ahead of time. So first we will start off with Rachel Littman. She's with the Yale Alumni Nonprofit Alliance. She has a BA from Yale, a JD from Seton Hall Law School, and she has been with YANA since 2015. She co-founded the YANA New England chapter and was a member of the board's executive committee as chair of the chapter chairs. She also started the Rhode Island chapter of Yale Women. Starting July 2021, Rachel was the president of the Yale Club of Houston. Rachel worked for several years as a Wall Street corporate finance attorney before her attention to higher education and nonprofit governance. She served as the chair of the board of trustees of Moses Brown School, an independent K-12 Quaker school in Providence, Rhode Island. Rachel also focuses on matters related to racial and socioeconomic inequities, access to and success in education through her research platform website, www.seethegaps.org. Rachel stepped up to be YANA's first executive director in 2019, and we are very happy that she did. Our next speaker will be Elise Pfeiffer Chapman, who received a BA from Stanford, an MBA from Yale, and an MA in consulting from Keene. Elise is the founder and president of 1stGenYale, a Yale Alumni Association shared interest group, which became a 501c3 with a 3,000 alumni and student membership. Prior to that, she was the inaugural founder of the Yale Alumni Association's Career, Life, and Yale program. Later in 2017, she co-founded Yale Alumni Facebook group, which now has 22,000 alumni. In 2020, she co-founded Y Jobs, Alumni for Student Jobs Board on the Yale Alumni Marketplace platform. Elise served on the Yale Alumni Association's Board of Governors for 8 years, including the chair. On the fundraising side, Elise recently led her 40th SOM class reunion to a 79% participation record, which is pretty amazing. Elise is honored to be the recipient of both the Yale Medal and the Stanford Medal for her volunteer service. After entering a master's in consulting and mental health, she started a career counseling practice in 2016. And her earlier careers were in commercial and investment banking on the mergers and acquisitions side and nonprofits. So without further ado, we will have our speakers. And thank you so much for joining us.
Awesome. Thank you, Andrew. Thank you, Mara, and everyone. And welcome. Mara, you're going to stop sharing your screen and I will share mine. Well, actually, we can do the poll first. Let's launch the poll. All right, Lisa and I just wanted to know kind of what everybody's bringing to this program. So we'll let it go for a couple of seconds. Or a minute or two. Please, everyone, hopefully that popped up. I don't know who else can see the answers, but me and Mara maybe. Oh, we got a lot of seasoned people with us, Lise.
Sure do. It's great. Do we know what the results are yet?
Yep, I'm going to share in a second.
Okay.
We have 73, 75 people on, and we're up to 60 answers. So a couple more people, if you haven't answered,
Wow,
give us a
fantastic.
second, let us know. This will be helpful so we can tailor our information. This is good. Looks like we have a lot more people who are seasoned than
Thank you, everyone, for
beginners.
joining us. While
All
Rachel
right, I'm going to end the
taking
poll and share the results. I don't know what it looks like. Can you guys see it? Yes, big. Okay, so look, we have mostly seasoned members, a few years, and then a couple in the beginning. All right, awesome. Oops, sorry, let me turn those off. Let's go page up. There we go. All right, so as Andrew introduced us, Lisa and I have been kind of pals along this whole process of creating and growing shared interest groups and other nonprofits. As Andrew introduced, I joined Yana maybe 5, 6, 7 years ago when Yana was already a 501c3, but certainly we connect with a lot of nonprofits and Yale Alumni. I've created my own nonprofit, and so we've all gone through these phases of what you need to do, and certainly sharing best practices is when you're kind of deep in it. What are some of the things that can help you grow, and certainly things you're going to want to have in place as you do start to grow. So this is not really about programming. It's kind of the nuts and bolts about starting an idea, growing it, what are the things to think about, and some common issues that we're starting to see from people who are taking over clubs or groups or joining nonprofit boards. So Lisa and I are going to tag team on this, and Lisa, and we'll let you start. So we're going to spend a little bit of time on this because it looks like most people are seasoned, but still this always is useful. So go ahead, Lisa.
Okay, thank you. Thanks a lot, Rachel. We're having a blast doing this. So we're really grateful to be together again. First of all, you have to figure out what is the problem you're trying to solve. Does it make sense to you? Has it been done before? And what is your idea? So create your idea, create a very brief, almost mission statement. What is it you're trying to do? And then you want to test it out. So what we're going to talk about are various stages of growth. I'm going to start with starting from the idea to basically being 5 years out, which is where we are. And then Rachel will pick up from being in a nonprofit 501c3 all the way to the end. So let's just start. What research have you done? Have you talked to people? Have you bounced it off people? What kinds of things do you need to know? So let's stop here. You don't want to spend 6 months writing a 25-page white paper like you would have done in high school or in college. What you need to do is start with a brief mission statement. Ours was about a page and a half with a timeline. And you want to bounce that off a few people. Because as one alum told me when I asked him, I have an idea, but I've only done 3 months of research and I want to do 6 months more. He told me, just stop, just do it. Why? Because what you need to know is what you're going to need to know when you actually have something that's live, not something that's theoretical. And only when you have something that's live, will you then know what you need to know. So you're going to do the research, but you're going to do a very brief research, and then you're going to start. Next point. Do you clearly articulate the problem you're trying to solve? You may need to adjust it. You may need to refine it based on what you find out. You've got to be nimble and flexible throughout the whole project. Has anybody else done the research or any work related to what you're thinking about? For us, I wanted to do 6 months more research of what other institutions were doing with first-gen low-income students. I did a little bit of research. I got a master's in counseling and mental health working with this population for 4 years, but I thought I needed more. And that's where this wonderful alum said, just stop right here and just do it. So what we did was we started with the idea. I had a partner, Magna Vergara, who joined me. I came up with the idea in February of 2015, following the Halloween incident on campus, tested it with a few people, talked to a few alums, and Magna and I worked together after the idea was launched, and we came up with a few pilots. And the first pilot we came up with was to work with Virgie Howard, and starting with Kim Goth-Cruz to work with the first-year scholars program at Yale. And we started that in July 2016. We just had our 6th annual event. So our program had legs. We knew from that very first event, we had something that made sense. We then had an event in November, and we kept repeating. And as you know from our website and from all our graphics and events we do, we had enough to then work toward becoming a shared interest group. And that's what our goal was. So it was really important. You're not going to do this alone. You're going to have partners. You're going to have partners throughout your process, some in the beginning, some in the middle. People are going to join you. People will then find they have other priorities. and other things they need to do. So you got to be flexible, but you're not working alone. And don't think you'll ever work alone on this kind of thing, because you need more people around the table with diverse points of view and different backgrounds, different cultures, different experiences to make it a meaningful, either a shared interest group or a nonprofit.
Awesome. And we wanted to say, if anybody has questions, please put them in the chat, or you can shoot us offline if you've got something related to your particular program or issue. I'm kind of an operations geek, and I've had to learn a lot. As with most nonprofits, you don't have much staff or resources. So I've had to learn a lot about technology, how to outsource things, how to do all the kinds of things to be a real nonprofit with your shoestring budget. So we created a couple of guidelines. So there's a fundamentals document. It's a kind of an outline with some links to, and let me see if I can, no, I don't want to do this now. We'll go do it later. We'll share it afterwards with a live link. But we have in there lots of details and ideas for different kinds, from everything from starting a website to technology for email communications platforms, things like that. And we did a webinar. I tag teamed with Rachel Tibbetts, who's an alum out in Colorado, who's a little more advanced in some of these database things. But chances are you've found someone around who knows how to do this stuff, and we've learned the hard way. So we want to share with you. So if you are anywhere in your nonprofits that you're looking to, you think you need a new communications platform, you've got pieces everywhere and you want to pull them together, we've done a lot of that work already. Happy to share with you. It doesn't mean it's the best and only way to do it, but just want to kind of save people some trouble. So that link will be live. Our YouTube channel has all of our best practices videos on there, and happy to do this.
And then let me,
yeah, go ahead, please, Lisa.
I was going to say, for those in the audience who are thinking about starting a SIG or in a SIG or reviving a SIG, the YAA SIG guidelines are really helpful. They're also helpful for people in nonprofits, because they give you basically, under Nicholas Lewis, very smartly addresses, you need a couple of years of programming to make sure you have a program. So many organizations will start with a corporate structure, board, term limits, all the corporation, and they don't have programming. So I think what the YAA does brilliantly is it has you start with the programming, with the people. What are you trying to do? How are you doing it? What kind of events have you had? What do they look like? How do you assess them? You can build your team of leadership from that experience, but you've got to start with something that's going to attract people. And I just want to recommend that SIG guideline for everyone.
Right. And whether you're doing a SIG or any other kind of nonprofit, Lisa, put up front is like, you need to have a mission of some sort. Now, most nonprofits, we're always going to revise and rethink our mission, but having that up front and getting buy-in to that will really, really help. Because I can tell you, as Yana has grown, we used to say yes to everything. And we got to the point where we just didn't have the second bullet point, enough resources to do everything. Plus, and I'm sure you've heard this, we'd have a little mission creep, right? Things would start up and we'd have to be like, is that really fundamentally related to our mission? And we're in a great position now that we're big enough that we don't have to do all sorts of programming just because we need to fill the space. But being true to your mission will be very helpful going forward. And you're going to need, if you need to go fundraising, if people are joining your board, can you articulate back the elevator pitch? What is your mission? What do you stand for? We definitely want to talk about resources a little bit more. Lisa, do you want to start about that? Because that's really important to think about.
Yeah, let me jump on that. Thanks, Rachel. We put resources up at the top. Most people think resources are money. No, resources are time, talent, and treasures, as known in the YAA. But let's start with yourself. Do you personally have enough time, energy, drive, commitment? Every one of these organizations has someone or a group of people who own it. They start it, they run with it, they live and breathe it. You need that kind of commitment and capacity and drive to be successful. You're not going to do it forever. In fact, you're going to create your own obsolescence as you develop legacy, which Rachel will get to a little later on. But you've got to assess yourself honestly. Why are you doing this? Are you doing it to really do something for your local community? Are you doing it because you've got a personal agenda of some kind, or you want to have the experience to do something else or make connections, or we all have different reasons and motivations. You just need to assess what are yours. And to be successful doing a startup, either for a shared interest group or a nonprofit, you really have to assess that, because there are going to be times where you don't want to do it. And there are things that come up and you're going to have to make sacrifices and choices. And your organization will suffer if you and your team aren't committed going in the same direction and going over the long haul. You're not doing it for a week or a month, you're doing it for years. We're 5 years old. I think Rachel is 10 years.
Yeah,
Is that
we're
right? How
10, we're in
many years?
11th year, yep.
Yeah, so that's really important. The next set of resources are obviously money, or not necessarily money, but people. People would be next. Do you have a team of people that you can work with, that you can trust, that will bounce ideas off you, that will give you honest feedback, and you have to listen and you have to change. You have to be, as I said earlier, very nimble in terms of paying attention to what's going on around you. You're always assessing and reassessing what you're doing. You're always tweaking it. You're always improving it, but you have to be open and receptive. You can't own it to be only yourself. It's a group event. Once you launch, it's a group event. You may be the leader or the head or executive director, but it's a group activity.
Yep.
The third important resource are resources. We learned the hard way, which is when you start out, everything's free. Zoom is free, MailChimp's free, everything's free, except when you get 50 people, 70 people, 100 people. Our annual operating costs are $1,500 a year, just for the operations, just for the social media and all the electronic channels. So while you can start out and do it for free for a while, you're going to be running up very closely to financial charges, because you want to have Zoom more than 40 minutes. You want to have MailChimp more than 10 people. So you've got to be really dexterous and either have private resources or alumni who are donating to you even before you're a nonprofit, who are doing gifts in kind to help you keep it going. But that's something to be really aware of.
Yeah.
Rachel, I'll turn it back to you.
Totally agree. I would say thinking about the kinds of systems and when you're thinking about your programming and your mission, how do you execute that and what's the platform? Now, Jana was lucky enough that we kind of got a little bit on the early side of doing Zoom. And once the pandemic hit, we were very quickly realized that we needed our own license. So, we had a little bit of resources. I was able to get the board out in front of that. And we quickly were able to ramp up so we could handle 1,000 people at a time. That does cost money. But again, if you watch some of these, one of the videos we did and some of the other resources, if you are a 501c3, do not pay full price for everything. You do not have to. If you can't get someone to donate to you in kind, there are mechanisms, websites, things like TechSoup, where you can get discounted licenses or free. Almost every kind of technology platform, you should be able to, as a nonprofit, get something for free. So I would definitely invest in kind of the operations and the systems, because as you get bigger, things will quickly get expensive. And then what you learn is that systems don't always talk to each other. And so you may start out on a spreadsheet, right? And you may start out with a group of people just on email. But particularly if you become a 501c3, if you're actually formed as an organization, it's no longer yours. It is a public organization. You hold the money in trust for the public, and you're working for the public and the public good. So you want to be able to ensure, and it's good best practices of an organization to make sure the information is stored someplace correctly, that other people have access to it. And also for efficiency purposes, you really want to make sure that information works with each other. The worst case scenario is that someone has all the passwords and then they leave and no one knows how to get into something. So highly recommend doing some of these things ahead of time. And again, the details in the document that I shared will kind of lay that out of some of the systems and platforms that you're going to want to think about, and having some basic procedures and practices in place. And again, this is where, and I said this on the left-hand column, a lot of nonprofits get into trouble. I mean, I was trained as a lawyer. Jana has brought on attorneys general and people in kind of enforcement divisions and lawyers who have had to help nonprofits. And, 9 times out of 10, it's not the fraudulent system, which at least everybody here, I'm sure, has a story. The better procedures and double checks you have and balances, the less likely it's going to be that somebody's going to abscond with your funds or misuse your logo or something like that. You don't want to get into that situation. But even if you do that, mostly nonprofits get in trouble because they've just overlooked something. Somebody forgot to file something, wasn't on someone's calendar. There's been a turnover and the past treasurer didn't pass on the spreadsheet to someone else. So that stuff may be boring, but there are definitely plenty of us out there who like the kind of governance, nitty-gritty operation stuff. Essential to do. Oops, I think sorry about that.
I was going to jump in. I'll just go
Yeah,
back.
please.
Rachel. Yeah, let me just go back, both tying together resources and the operations. And it depends on what stage where you find yourself. If you're a startup, yes, you're going to try to use these services, MailChimp, Zoom, et cetera, and you can do it for free for so long. Then you've got to figure out how to pay for it. But before you get to the more elaborate systems that nonprofits need to adopt because of the size they get to, the number of programs, people, the information they need to record, we simply started with an Excel spreadsheet. And one of your key resources are the people who participate in your programs. That's where you start. And so what we did was, with an Excel spreadsheet, every person who comes to one of our events or has asked, I want to be on your mailing list or connect me with something, we have an Excel spreadsheet. And I know it's a little bit antiquated, but that's how we track our 3,400 alumni and supporters. And we track every event they've been to and when they email us, and how, if they have an interest in something or what their background is, so we can bring them into future programming. We also can ask them, as we have done the last 2 months, because we became a 501c3, we have been asking for financial help to run our operations. As you know, we and Yana do not get funding from Yale or the Yale Alumni Association, as well as many other SIGs and Yale clubs. So we need to rely on outside funding to pay for our basic operations, as well as any other programming we do. But use your participants who join you, who come to you, who say, I want to be involved, begin to use them as resources as well. And I just think that's an important thing to tie together.
Yeah, yeah. And we could get into this later, but certainly some of the resources that everybody's going to need at some point or other is legal assistance. And I can, you know, we don't give out legal advice. You may have lawyers on your board, and hopefully you've got people who are willing to not be general counsel, but be able to kind of spot issues and let you know when it's time to go outside. We have certainly now amassed a list of Yale alumni, particularly who are Yale Law School alumni as well, who are in this space. Usually you'd have to get on as a client with them. And then again, in that document, and at the end, when we get to resources, there are places to get help, whether it's drafting bylaws and handling your 501c3 application, or filing your 990s, or figuring out where you need to file for charitable donations, et cetera. But it's not instantaneous. It's hard to get it free. So if you're used to dealing with a board that says, oh, we're a nonprofit, we should get all this stuff for help for free, that's not really how it works. But there's a little more involved in that. Happy to help you, but we get lots of questions like that, and we want to be able to help share information as to where you would go to get that kind of help. We've done some webinars on that.
And I was just going to add too, in addition to legal help, there's all sorts of other help. For example, when you create your organization, your brand identity matters. So when you create your mission statement and your logo, your name, your platform, you're going to use that throughout wherever you are. And you may update it over time, or you may keep it the way you like it. So brand development is really important, including logos and where you're going to use them. How are you going to communicate your message, your programs? What systems are you going to use? Who's going to be in charge of those systems? Make sure it's not just you. It cannot just be one person, it has to be multiple people. And then how do you obviously manage that information? So I just want to tie together where you start and where you are and how you use it. And when you find you're doing a fundraising campaign, we use QGive. We use all our information on QGive, but again, we had to put our logo and all our information on it. So you're going to continue to use your systems throughout other people's software platforms.
Right. And I definitely want to pick up again on that brand development. It's not just brand development, it's brand protection. Yes. Obviously, all of us as SIGs or shared interest groups or clubs have a kind of licensing agreement with Yale. We get to use the Yale name. Now, there are certain requirements for that. We can't run around and go, endorse political, candidates and things like that. At the same token, if you're at a nonprofit or created a SIG, and again, in this document, I've gone through the nitty gritty of like where you can go for getting free help or very low cost help to even designing a logo, and then what kind of formats and how you do it. There's all sorts of work out there. We had a brand policy. Luckily, we had an alum, Grace Shea, on our board who created I'm not a marketing person, but luckily we had someone who knows this. And I even know like what our colors are, our hex colors, the fonts we use, all these kind of style things. Plus, if you have chapters, like there are a bunch of SIGs and the people that have chapters, you got to be careful like how you're going to manage people going off and using your identity and your brand. And you want to make that consistent so it looks professional and everybody's singing to the same tune. So you want to be able to manage your brand, manage your mission, And having that kind of set up ahead of time will save you a lot of time and headache later.
And before we go to Andrew, I was just going to give a plug to John Boak, class of 70, who's our graphic designer, who created our logo working with us and did our website and all that. So use the Yale community. There are lots of Yalees who would love to be part of whatever you're creating. And it's really fun to work together. Andrew, do you want to share your questions?
Yes, we do have a couple of questions. One question is, do you have any good suggestions for minimizing costs in your 990s?
I saw that question. I asked the question is that for minimizing your costs as they appear in your 990s or the cost of filing a 990? Whoever it was, can you unmute yourself and just ask? I saw Andrew, who was the name? Can you just ask them to? Just so you remember, if you're 501c or drafting, saving on drafting and filing.
Thomas Will, could you?
Yeah, no, I see his question, drafting and filing. I would say, I mean, if you are under $50,000, and don't quote me on this, but that's the IRS rule. If you're under $50,000 in revenue, you only have to file an easy postcard, which literally is just saying we're under 50, you check a box saying we're under $50,000. Here's our name, whatever, it goes on. You have to set up an account, I think, at the IRS with your EIN number. Once you get above $50,000, then you need real financials. And this is where it's a pain in the neck. And if you don't have, and again, this is what get back to Lisa's idea of like, use your resources, get someone to help you. Nobody wants to do these, but you have to do them every year. We decided, luckily we were at a point where we have enough fundraising, enough money. We went and hired an outside accounting bookkeeping company called Jitasa, which is actually started by an SOM grad, and they're terrific. There are plenty of other out there. You can hire part-time people through Upwork or whatever. Having someone who kind of knows how to do it, because it's a pain in the neck. You have to do projections, and once you're there, you have to do it, and it becomes public. So I don't know how to save money on it other than have someone do it yourself, which you can do, and if it's unaudited, or find someone who knows how to do financial statements and fill out the forms. Or it's not that expensive if you're some organizations will do it for like $150 or something. Will do your first 990 or something like that.
But where the expense jumps up, if you do not file, you have to file annually. And if you do not file annually, there's a huge penalty. It also takes 3 years to get back your nonprofit status. So you really need someone to really pay attention closely to deadlines and filing requirements.
Okay, and the second question. Yes, the second question is, how do you strike the right balance of investing into paid services and getting in-kind help?
I mean, I got to tell you, we did in-kind and kind of volunteer and free things, as Lisa was saying. We got it in about 10 years, and we couldn't do it like that anymore. And luckily, we had a good fundraising year, and so I've had to switch and get the board to believe in it, and they do, that we needed to make some infrastructure investments, and that costs money. Now that hopefully with that investment, it'll free us up, and then we can use volunteers and people to do more people related stuff and not these kind of nitty gritty, operations things. So that's kind of the balance, is like, where does you and the board want to spend the money on? Is it paying someone to do this work, or outsourcing that and then using your volunteer help to do the more substantive it's really going to depend on what your mission is, how many people you have to help, and how many dollars you have to be able to outsource and pay for things. That takes time too. It's very easy to find someone and pay someone to do it all. If you're really trying to count, if you're going up through Upwork or some of these other freelance, it takes a lot of money and time to manage freelance people. So you may save some money, but it's going to cost you a lot of time to do that. That's my only 2 cents.
And where 1stGenYale is, we're kind of halfway there. We're all volunteer talent, except we pay John Boak, who gives us a very reduced rate for the graphic work. And we have a very strong board of 6 members, a variety of backgrounds and classes and years, all who have important roles and jobs, from treasurer to secretary to programming and the like. So we're still in the volunteer run level, but as the work increases and as our positions get deeper, it definitely gets harder. We're always looking for volunteers to jump in. But again, with volunteers, you're working with people who are really dedicated and really care and want to be part of your organization, but their job takes them away, or their family responsibilities take them away. And they're torn because they want to be with you, they want to help you, but maybe they can't do it by next Tuesday. Maybe they can do it in 2 weeks, but you need something within a week. And so it depends on what you're doing and where you are. It's a delicate balance because you really want both the volunteer help, And if you can afford some outside help like we do for our graphics, which I think helps establish our brand and our marketing, it's well worth it, but we don't pay for, and other than Zoom and the electronics, we don't pay for anything else yet.
Yeah.
But we probably will get to that. We probably will get to that. I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, I see Esther's follow-up question about running a nonprofit as a business. At the end of the day, a nonprofit is a business. Your mission isn't for profit. There's nothing wrong with making a profit. There's nothing wrong with having it. There are good business practices, like you want to make sure you have 6 months, or so worth of expenditures. There are all things you can do about growing it. No, nothing is free. And sometimes, for those of you and those of us who are executive directors, or if you're on a board, you may have to convince your board that not everything's free. And if we want to do X, we're going to have to invest the money. People say how are we going to realize and execute on our mission? And sometimes you're going to have to have recurring questions. What is our mission? Where do we want to be? And how do we want to do that? If you just want to be a volunteer group of people who do programs, that's awesome, but own that. If you want to be a professional organization that acts like one, which is where I've been pushing Yana, that takes money and investment and time. And sometimes it takes a while to get people to say, yeah, that's really what we are, and we want to do it that way. But you can't make that decision alone. And particularly as a nonprofit, you've got board, everybody has to kind of be in on that. And then and that allows you to operate and go forward.
Yeah. In terms of the questions about board members and teaching board members the duties, yes, we do have a code of ethical conduct. It's required. When you become a nonprofit, there's basically a 20-page document you need to complete, in addition to articles of incorporation, bylaws, and the rest. You need to have a budget, a 3-year budget. It's a very extensive. You can Google requirements to form a nonprofit, but basically, when you're looking for board members, or new board members, every board member should have a particular role. And you have to, again, as I said in the beginning, what is their motivation? What do they want to gain out of it? We've had several board members actually be on our board, work with us, and they've actually ended up with 2 paid full-time jobs being executive directors at nonprofits. So our experience for volunteers is if people, want to help us and join us, and we're grateful, we also want to help them succeed where they want to go. And they're still board members for us. They're still volunteers, but now they have new positions in new nonprofits where they're executive directors themselves. So we're very honored that they working together, and both of them have said to us that their experience with us helped them get their jobs. So you have to understand what the motivation is for the board members, what their role is, and you have to be sensitive to their outside obligations, their jobs, their families. It's different than working. I mean, you want to respect all people, but volunteers can come and go at a moment, and you rely on them, and you need to respect them and have them feel that you're grateful for their participation, which we are.
Yeah, and you can always hire students. If you're not, the other benefit of being a 501c3 is that you can hire students through Yale, and they get paid usually through the student experience. Or there are other ways, and they like to work with you too. But again, that takes time management. I just wanted to answer one more question, maybe Lisa, before we get to the next.
Yeah, Andrew has a question. Andrew?
Oh, go ahead, Andrew.
You're muted. Oh.
Yeah, you answered the 2 questions that were out there. So you're
I see another one about people are asking questions about teaching board members about duty of care, fiduciary duty, etc. Yana has done a bunch of those best practices. There's a Yale alum, Sarah Goldsmith Schwartz, who probably was the leading private school attorney in the country. She's up in New England, and she's done a lot for us. And just as you know, a lot of lawyers, they will not record their programs because they don't want to be construed as quote legal advice. But at the end, we have resources of where to go. Any good board should also have its own training its own board members, how to be good board members. And so there are a ton of resources out there, best practices. What does fiduciary duty mean? What's the differences between the role of a governing board and the operations, et cetera. So there's a lot there. There are a variety of ways to do it, but any good board best practice, don't assume your board knows about it, especially if you want to be open, inclusive. You're going to get a range of people's experiences. Part of your job as a nonprofit is to train your own board to make sure they know how to do the best that they do, so they can all keep your organization going, make sure nothing happens, and be really good ambassadors for your mission out in the open.
Yeah, and in terms of the next question about best practices for maintaining an established organization, It depends on where you are on the learning curve. Stages of growth, as you find in any company, it depends on how far along you are. If you're a mature business, what do you need to refresh? What do you need to do to bring in new ideas, new people? If you're in middle stage, like we are, how do we keep our momentum going? What kind of programming should we be doing? What program should we start? What programming has a natural life? What kind of systems do we need to know? How do we migrate to a larger system so they're not on individual Excel spreadsheets like our database? Now that we have donors, and thank you to everyone who's made a donation to us in the last 2 months, we're incredibly grateful. What do we do with that group, and how do we make sure we are there with them and helping them and getting them on board in other ways in terms of our programming? And maybe they want to host an event or two. So how do we do that? But in terms of guidelines, I don't know, Rachel, you maybe have more guidelines than I do. We're in the middle of living this. So we don't really we obviously read a lot. We spend a lot of time. One of our directors is a high-level executive in human resources, and he has been doing this for 40 years. So he is really our go-to guy on organizational management, best practices. I'd be glad to, well, in fact, I'll give you his name. His name is Michael Watson. He's a class of 81. And he's phenomenal. And if you would like his email, just email me and I will gladly put you in touch with him, and he can help you with organizational management and best practices.
And then at the end, when we get to resources, and then on the YANA website in our resources section, we've compiled a bunch of those, like Board Source is an organization. And if you're in a specialty field like K-12 education, there are, private school, a lot of alliances or associations have training for how to be a board member and things like that. So there's tons of stuff out there. We'll get to that at the end, but I know we've only got about 15 minutes. I want to jump to legacy and longevity. Hopefully we've given you guys a sense of thinking about things ahead of time, what to have in place, and how to rely on people. But as you're thinking about, again, if you guys just want to do it, it's a one and done, you're doing a couple programs, or as Lisa always likes to say, right, you want to think about obsolescence from day one. You want to set yourself up, obviously, that things also, you want to make sure that the organization will outlive you and any particular one person. So thinking about that going forward is always helpful. Lisa, you want to jump in about people and stuff?
Yeah, I was just going to say there are different forms for different organizations. There are many shared interest groups which are shared interest groups, and they're not nonprofits. So there are others that are nonprofits. So it depends on where you are and what you're doing. You could just be a Facebook group and have events through Facebook and not really be a shared interest group at all. You could just be a group of alumni who want to do something, and Facebook is a vehicle for you, or you do it through LinkedIn if it's employment career related. So there are different ways to do something. The nonprofit world, as Rachel said earlier, I mean, it is a business. It's run by the Department of Treasury under the IRS. You have very strict guidelines, what you need to do, and you follow, and you need to have the practices in place. You have to have monthly board meetings, for example. You've got to have certain people in certain committee positions like treasurer and secretary and president. We have term limits. There are different kinds of requirements that are built into becoming a nonprofit. And you have to, when I said earlier, kind of resources, are you there, with your own self in in the quiet of the day, that you want to take this on? Because becoming a nonprofit is a whole nother experience and commitment and workload that's different than just putting on a series of events or running a Facebook group or doing something else in your community. It's fantastic. I can't tell you how rewarding it is. This has been one of the best things I've ever done in my whole life. I mean, at my age, to be working with all these incredible Yaleys doing this, I mean, I would never have guessed I'd be doing this. And I'm grateful for everybody who's had a role and continues to support us and be with us. But it's a commitment. It's a big commitment. And just want to make sure your eyes wide open with this. And as I said earlier, once I started, I realized I was planning my own obsolescence. How long will I be doing this? And how do I train the management team behind me to take over? And they're going to do it their own way. They're going to do it in a way that keeps the organization growing, prospering, being successful. And, Rachel and I, we all need to move on. So when we do that, the timing will be right for us, but you have to build that in as well.
Right. Which is why the sooner you can write down your mission, if you've got strategic plans, there are certain policies, as Lisa said, you'd have to have under the IRS. And there are other kind of recommended best practices of kind of policies. and procedures in place, but you want that someplace that it's centrally located. Lisa, we're talking about like Google Drive, or there are plenty of other platforms to do that, and make sure that's shared. So when you start to have succession, it's easier to pick up and keep the organization going. We'll get into one of our slides in a few minutes about what happens if you've picked up on a nonprofit that's had one of these problems where there's been a lapse in transfer of information or such. And so having kind of a master plan, master calendar, highly recommended. There's nothing like, I just joined the board of another established organization. And I said, oh, do we have copies of what was filed with the state? They said, oh, we've never filed with the state. I'm like, are we not an ex-state organization? And so this is where it's like, oh, now we got to go back, get it. You have to go file with the state, get an exemption, go back, catch up, and then refile. I mean, it's a pain in the neck. So you just need to have some tickler system, a master calendar, something. And before you just kind of taking half a step back, if you're in the kind of beginning phase, do you become a 501c3 or not? There is the whole concept, as Lisa was saying, you could just be a group. Another interim step is, could you get housed under some existing nonprofit as a project or as a fiscally sponsored project or organization? Yana did this for the first time. We now have our first fiscal sponsored project, Go South, which was one of our interns started this organization. There are professional organizations out there that do nothing but become fiscally sponsor ideas and projects. And there's some fee, but they handle all the 501c3 stuff. You just do your thing and they handle everything. So that may be a route you want to go if you haven't done the whole full-fledged 501c3 step yet.
Yeah, the only thing I'd like to come back to, because I know all the people in the audience, and wow, over 90 people, incredible participation. Thank you all for joining us. We're all working with volunteers in some capacity. We're all trying to make out what's best, and the Yale community is beyond outrageously outstanding. I mean, I think it's the people and the alums have been phenomenal, but I think the key is, how do you keep them engaged? How do you keep them engaged in your programs? How do you keep them engaged as volunteers? How do you get them involved on your boards? How do you get them involved in running your programs with you? And I think one of the key things to be effective and to have impact is to, when someone comes to you an idea, let them run with it. Support them, stand behind them. We have alums who say, oh, I have a program, an idea on education K through 12. I said, great, I'm going to help you. And they're like, well, what do you mean? I said, well, you're going to run it. And they go, no, I don't know how to do this. I said, don't worry, we're going to help you. We will do all the mechanics, all the operations. We will work on the design of the invitation together, the content. It's your program, you're going to host it, but we're going to help you. And that builds people up. That makes them feel wanted. That makes them feel like they have a value. And guess what? If they do one, they do two, they do three. But you've got to support them and give them credit and let them run with it. And you may not like all that you hear. Just zip your lip, because you're going to lose you're not running the whole place. You want the community of volunteers to run it with you and work together as a partnership. And so you want those volunteers to feel that they're as critical as anybody else working on your team.
Right. That's a great idea. I mean, I would say Yana, because we're like 5 to 6 years older, that we made the decision to switch more to a professional model. And that's where we needed an executive director. So I stepped into that role to do it. So I am the one centrally managing a lot of this stuff, because we were letting too many people do too many things different places, and we were kind of losing control of that. It was a good problem to have. We could have gone either way. It's really, in conversations with the board, and that's a particular route we've gone. And I think it's worked out really well. And I think there's a lot of work for us to continue to do. We love our help. I mean, who help us, but we're also in the business of helping you. This is what we do. We help nonprofits and people who are in the social impact space. And that has certain elements of it that we know that's our mission, and that's something we're directed towards. So some things we use volunteers for, some things we don't. I may hire someone to do that.
And you've got to try different things. It's not always going to work, and that's okay. If you get 80% right, it's a home run, seriously. So you're going to try things, you're going to test things. Things aren't going to go well, things are going to be great. But the stuff that doesn't go well, you know what? Learn from it. It's not negative. It's just a little stop sign in the road that says, hey, you hit a little detour. You got to figure out how to go around and fix what you're doing and make it better. And you will make it better. But don't beat yourself up if something doesn't go right, because that's the learning curve.
Yeah, you call Lisa or you call me, and if you face some other issue, because we're going to get into some of these common issues, chances are someone else has dealt with it. And you can always get some support dealing with whatever it is you're dealing with. So I thought, Lisa, maybe we could turn to what some of these common issues are. For those of you who are in established nonprofits or you're joining a nonprofit, there are a lot of times where there is a founder who is currently still the president or a chair, and it could be anything from 5 years to 30 years. And that can be really good for institutional knowledge and really good stuff, but there always sometimes can be issues respect to someone doesn't want to let something go, or there's different ideas, or that he or she has a hard time with, you know, the newer cohorts and generation. So just be aware of that if that's there. It can usually be, it's always really good, but occasionally it can cause some tensions, and there have been histories, and if you've gone to business school and or anything else, I'm sure there are case studies of this, but you know, just be aware of that if it comes up. This pay to play give get policies. This has come up also with people who are new to nonprofits, or as you're recruiting younger folks coming out. Yana we did a series on nonprofit and social impact careers, and one of them was how to get on a board. What is a board? What is the role of a board? Mm-hmm. And not everybody knows that there's there is an expectation, some kind of financial commitment usually. And you want to, again, that's one of those policies you want to really be upfront about, because you don't want to have any surprises. You don't want to have it turn out that there's an uneven, as we get to one of the other ones, there's a different level of volunteer engagement, and some people feel put upon or whatnot. And you do need money to support these things. So have that in place. Yana has a very modest one. If you're going to be on the Met Museum or some of these bigger ones, it may be millions of dollars, but it is completely an industry-wide expectation and best practice to say, if you want to be on the board, there's kind of there is an expectation, lay that out if you need to. Either having an understanding what the practice is, or what an actual policy and expectation is of your board members, how much you expect from them financially and volunteer time-wise. Lisa, do you want to say anything else about those?
Let me just
start
say,
diversity,
yeah,
equity.
I think it's in terms of we live and breathe diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging. We have from the very second we started. Because of the Halloween incident in October 2015, we knew that a lot of the Yale students who were first gen and or low income came from different backgrounds, and that Yale wasn't meeting them in ways that they needed support. And that's where we started. And from the very beginning, our fabric has been completely focused on actually celebrating diversity. We respect and want alumni and students of all kinds. While we're an alumni organization, many of our programs are jointly with students and jointly with parts of Yale, from Yale College to the graduate school to the School of Public Health and others. And we very much thrive in diversity. We want people from different backgrounds, different generations, different ethnicities, different cultures. And we treat everybody the same. We try to treat everybody the same. We're very conscious of our biases. We're trying to make sure our unconscious biases are conscious, so we can address them if we have them. We try to create programs which meets the needs of a diverse population. As you can tell from our board, we have a very diverse population, and all our programs represent diversity, equity, and inclusion and belonging. Because our bottom line is we want our first generation low income students to know that they are part of the Yale family, and we want Yale alumni, and those alumni who maybe had a bumpy time when they were at Yale and maybe felt wasn't for them, we want them to come back and know that Yale is for them too. And 1stGenYale, we see ourselves as a partnership and a bridge to many people and many organizations. And so come join us, come email us, come to our events. If you want to run something, we'd love you to do it. But thank you for asking that question. But we really are proud of our commitment and celebration of the Yale family who represent diversity, equity, and inclusion and belonging.
Excellent. Thank you, Elise, and thank you for bringing that up. I see a couple of questions about the changing the board expectations of the board, which is, it's tough. I see a question, how do you change expectations from members as you grow and evolve? Or how do you go from asking the board, your board, to have a financial component, not just their time? It's tough. When Yana instituted that maybe 2-3 years ago, we lost 1 or 2 board members who said that was not what they were in for. But we had made this very conservative, had a lot of hard conversations about, if we want to go forward and grow and do the things we've been talking about, then we need to start playing like we're a real nonprofit, and we have to start bringing in money in these other ways to be independent. So that's a tough board discussion, but ultimately we came to decide that's the way we wanted to go. We came up with some policy we thought was reasonable. We always have exceptions. We didn't want to talk about diversity and inclusion. We didn't want to alienate people to be on our board just because they couldn't write the check. We have other ways in which people can contribute, but we did want to make it out there as an expectations. And that was a really hard internal discussion to have because not everybody felt that way. And so you may find that the same in your organization. People have gone through this before. You may need to bring in an outside consultant or just be prepared and get a sense of where everybody is. And there's a whole nother science of how you manage difficult discussions and decision-making processes, but that was certainly one for us. I think you can see some of these issues. We can talk about them later, but I wanted, since we're hitting up against when we want to take some other Q&A, wanted to talk about some situations where you're assuming a new role or taking over an existing, problematic nonprofit. Yana, we have gotten calls from other Yale alumni on totally unrelated issues, but maybe they themselves have asked to join a new board, or they've taken over a club, a club or a chapter or something, and there's been a problem, and they don't really know what to do. So what I always say is if you can find out the history, who was the prior chair, are there any other current board members you can get information from? Is there someone you can actually speak to who kind of knows what's going on? You may have to do some due diligence. Obviously, try to do that ahead of time. That's always a good best practice for anybody before you join a board, is know what you're joining. And as a board, looking for board members, you want to make sure you're transparent and you give people the information that they're going to need and know not only just about you and all your great mission, but that you're in good financial and organizational health. Obviously, if you're taking over something that is officially related to the Yale Alumni Association, you're going to want to call someone there, your liaison or other SIG or club leaders to find out some best practices or what might be going on. But don't panic. Usually it's just like, okay, let's find out where are the documents in history. Again, like I mentioned in the beginning, it's probably just a matter of it's sitting on someone's computer and something got lost in the shuffle. So before you just run around and say, oh my God, we lost our IRS exemption, we're never gonna be able to do this, it's all a mess. Like, hang on, let's try to salvage what's there, let's figure out what's there. You may have to go through a process of, as Lisa had mentioned, catching up, refiling, and having someone help you with that. And some of the resources that Mara shared and that are in our resources page, trust me, you're not the only person who's dealt with this. So there are ways to help you, particularly through the YAA, to kind of revamp, step up, and make sure the organization is in good stead as you move forward. Again, if you are yourself individually joining a board, or you are in a position in an organization that you have some questions, there's whistleblower policies. You might want to do some research. And if there are things that you just can't seem to get in order, maybe you're a new executive director or a new board chair, and you can't find this piece of information, it's not what happened with filings or financials. Like if you're trying to get these things in place and the structure, it's just not working, you have to make a personal decision whether is it able to be saved. Is there a real risk? Because remember, when you become a board member, you take on fiduciary duty for the organization itself in its financial operations. So anybody who's acting in the course of the organization, you could be liable. Obviously, that's why we have D&O insurance. But so it's a serious thing to be a nonprofit and to be on a nonprofit board or to be running a nonprofit. So I would say, don't worry, do your research, don't panic if you either find yourself in a role where you've inherited something that's a mess, or you've maybe joined a board and you kind of wish you hadn't and things are worse. You can always give us a call if I can or Lisa can't answer. We definitely know experts who deal with these kinds of things and can help you get the resources, or at least help you ask the right questions to get the right resources. Is there anything else on that you want to talk about? Or
yeah, no, I was just, we've been talking about people. People are your resources. And you should have your actual own personal board of directors, people you've gotten to know throughout your years, through various jobs, through various volunteer work. Rely on them. They're people who want to help you. So rely on people at the Alumni Association, rely on people in other shared interest groups, other nonprofits. People want to help you. And people are sincere about it. So I just want to say that. So I think that's important. I have one more thing I want to add, but not on this topic. So
yeah, good.
One thing I want, before we go to the Q&A, which I think is in about a minute, I just want to say one of the things that we're really proud about, again, focusing on alumni who come from first generation to college or graduate school. and low-income backgrounds, as well as students. We spend a lot of time, which I've learned from my work as a YA Board of Governors member, is building the Alumni Pipeline. That is one of our key mission objectives, is for alumni and students who join us, we want to help them succeed in their personal life, in their private life, and their volunteer work. We have nominated numbers of alumni who've received the Yale Medal, who are on the Board of Trustees right now, who are part of the Board of Governors, and we're really proud of that. We're really proud of people who we've gotten to know, who stepped up to join us in some capacity. We've worked with them closely, and we feel strongly about recommending them to be leaders in those places they see fit. And we spend a lot of time writing recommendations for people. Many are accepted. So we're very proud of that continuing network, again, based on diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging. So that's how we put our work into practice. We spend a lot of time being action-oriented, action-driven, not just talking, but making it all happen. And we spend a lot of time talking as well, but we really want to see impact, and we want to make a difference in the Yale community at large, and as well as the 1stGen Yale community.
That's awesome, Lisa. Thank you. And part of what Jana's mission is, our job is, we see ourselves supporting people like Lisa, supporting all of you who are out there doing your work so you can do what you do better. And it's, some people may say it's not glamorous, it's not, and again, this is something that took us a lot of internal discussions to really kind of embrace and say, we may not be doing the direct services, but we are providing all the support and resources and backbone to the people out there who know a lot more about these topics. Lisa and her team know a lot more about 1stGen issues than we do. We want to make sure that Lisa and her team have all the resources so they don't get in trouble. They can continue to be mission driven and not have to worry or ask a lot of questions. And based on the questions I've seen from people, you can see this comes up all the time. So we put a bunch of resources in here. You're welcome to look at all these, sign up for our webinars, watch, they're all archived on YouTube. And we always have growing programs that we do, including kind of small, we're gonna do some more smaller round table based to be able to answer very specific questions people have. Again, not giving legal advice, but whether you're testing out a program or you're as an executive director, you have some questions about how do you take over a SIG and what are some best practices. Like, there is a huge community. Jana has 8,000 people in our network who are all interested in this. And I would say for many of these alumni, Jana is their only place of alumni contact. And it's because a lot of people are in the nonprofit space from one way or another, as a donor or a volunteer or a board member or a Yale volunteer. And a lot of these issues come up over and over again. And so we're kind of trying to be the hub to share that information of best practices, direct you back to the YAA when that's relevant, help you find a third-party resource, or as we list here, some other nonprofit organizations or lawyers that might have that answer to you.
And that's how we got together, because I would not be here without Rachel, Andrew Burgee, thank you, Ken and Adoni. I'm here because I stood on the shoulders of all you guys way before me, and I'm still learning leaps and bounds. And Rachel's been helping me throughout the entire nonprofit process as well. And so we got together and said, let's work together and develop a resource book, which now has become this webinar with over 90 people. And we hope to continue this every year because we're getting better and better and have more and more ideas of what we need to do to keep it strong. So I want to thank you, Rachel, Andrew,
Lisa,
and Adoni, and everybody else who was behind where we are.
Yeah, and I got to say, when we were still like trying to figure out how to build our board pipeline, and we were very committed, we are still committed, obviously, to diversity and equity, and we wanted to get folks, because we do feel that training people how to be board members is part of our mission. And so, we said, Lisa, hey, do you know some young people? Do you know people who would love to be in the space? So some of our board members we got because Lisa Chapman, 1stGenYale, gave it to us. And I just wanted to do a shout out to my whole board and Jana in general, is that when we did a call for board members this past summer, we had 62 applications for two slots. And that's just, I think, a testament to kind of the nerve we've hit and how much people want to be giving back in the Yale community. So it says a lot about the Yale community. I mean, Lisa sees it through people who are working and volunteering with her. We see it through people who want to help each other and give back. And it just makes us really proud to be Yale alumni. So thank you all.
Yeah, well, thank you both of you. Yes. So Lisa and Rachel, we have about 15 minutes for Q&A. But before we do that, I think this would be a great opportunity for you to be able to plug both of your organizations as far as monthly meetings. So if people do want more information, how can they get in contact with you to know what times and what days that you have meetings so they can get more involved?
Rachel?
Go ahead, Lisa, do you want to do your?
Yeah, sure. We have monthly board meetings. In fact, our next board meeting is Sunday. We meet on Sundays at 3:00. One of our members is a Rhodes Scholar in the UK, in Oxford. And so we try to meet his schedule as well as our board members who work full time. So we find Sundays the best time. We actually have not, Andrew, really good question. We probably need to have an open forum. We tend to be very program driven. And so we're very specific in events related to careers or life skills or related to Yale, how to find a fellowship for students or depending on, so we really haven't had an open meeting, which I think is a really good idea, Andrew, and we're going to have an open meeting thanks to you. We're going to do that. There you go. Learning something new right now.
Yeah, I would say, again, we started out with these Ken and Adoma, we started out with these kind of open monthly programs at the Yale Club. And then when the pandemic, and then we started having chapters. And again, as we became more like a professional organization, we have board and committee meetings, but not necessarily open things. Again, we've got 8,000 people. So what we do is we're growing our actual board committees, we're growing those. And so that forum is, but if you're on our email list, you will see when we do usually in June, a call for nominations for board members and committee members. That's how we officially do it. And we have a whole official process for reviewing and interviewing people. All of our events and programs are open to anyone. You don't have to be a Yale alum, just want your interest. And then we do have some of these town halls. If people want to get involved, just shoot me an email. If you want to be involved more formally on the governance level, we have an official kind of annual process, but we can always find a spot if you want to get involved and do stuff. Just shoot me an email or fill out the form on our website that says join us, join a chapter. And the form is there also. That's a nomination form. We just keep open throughout the year.
Yeah. Yeah. And as we continue to grow, we'll be expanding our board. We'll be doing other things. So we're still in that kind of mezzanine area. And if you look at the stages of growth for companies, so depending on where we're doing right now, we have people doing various events and programs. We have, in fact, 2 coming up. I might as well advertise it here.
Yeah,
next Thursday, November 11th, we are having a great panel with a couple of students and a couple of faculty. We started a program called 1stGenYale Summer Bulldogs, where we acted as a bridge between Yale College students on financial aid who wanted to do research with faculty and nonprofits, and connected to funding by the Office of Career Strategy, which is under the Student Experience Award or the Office of Fellowship Program. So we actually ended up placing 44 Yale College students with Yale faculty and 2 nonprofits, paid for by Yale for $150,000. And we had done a pilot year before with 6 students and a professor at the Yale Law School. So we placed 50 students for $177,000. I think that's the total, paid for by Yale. So we're having a program sharing what we've done. You're going to hear directly from the students and the faculty. And this is to increase our program going forward for other Yale faculty and other Yale College students to apply. And then the following is November 18th, which is our 6th annual career networking mixer, where alumni and students come together. Alumni share their professions and careers with students who want to learn about what people do. We have 14 different career topics. So again, we have 2 events coming up. And by the way, while we're hosting all these events and they're focused on first-gen low-income alumni and students, we are open to the entire Yale community. We always have been, we always will, because we want people to blend. We want people to work together. We want people to understand differences and why differences can be celebrated. So we're always open to everyone. So thank you for letting me put my plug in. And
okay, can I plug our programs?
Yeah.
Can I plug our programs, Andrew? Do I have a minute?
Yes, sure. Why not?
Okay, good. So we just, I have to say, we just did a program last week. It was another one of our faith and wisdom foundations for social impact work. It was one of the most popular programs we've done. And that's now recorded and up on our YouTube channel. Next week, we've got 2 programs on November 9th. Again, this is on the events. It's on a calendar at the bottom of our website, the phone page, on using architecture and space to deliver and share your nonprofit mission. Some interesting discussions. And then on the 10th, we have one of our career series programs for kind of mid-level people in nonprofits about how to avoid burnout and manage mental health for those who do social impact work. It's going to be a bunch of different perspectives for that one. So if you or your staff is feeling some burnout these days, particularly during the pandemic, you might want to patch into there and feel like you're not the only one doing this, and hopefully get some resources and support. December 2nd, we're doing the last of our social impact career series about kind of the third phase of meaningful engagement in later years. This is geared towards people 65 and older, about what are the challenges and the opportunities to give back and engage in social impact in a meaningful way that may be beyond just writing a check. And there's people, we're going to have some faculty members on there, someone who started encore.org, intergenerational, Elise, who talked about that, some interesting programs there. And on the 7th, rather than doing a large, we did an online gala last year. This year, we're going to do a big networking program. So sign up. We're going to, as many people as we can get on there. We'll do a random breakout rooms with some kind of fun projects and just letting people hang out and meet each other, which is one of those things we've kind of lost during the pandemic. We've done so many kind of delivery of service and information. We've done a couple of these breakout rooms, but we want to get back to that and give people chances to have smaller community groups to talk. We always say YANA stands for you are not alone, and we want to actually execute that and put you with a group of people that if you've got similar issues based on a lot of the questions we've seen, there are other people who are dealing with the very same issues.
Just a quick question. The Architecture and Space event, when is that again?
It's on the 9th. It should be on our event page on the calendar at the bottom. So if you go to the YANA website, the shortcut is yana.community. On the top, you can either click events or you can scroll all the way down to the bottom and there's a calendar and it should have all the programs up there. And then that'll take you to the Zoom registration page.
I just put the link in the chat.
Oh, thank you.
Do we have any other questions from the studio audience, quote unquote?
I was going to say, while people are formulating their questions, one thing that's also really important that we didn't touch on earlier is that, well, Rachel and I, we do a lot of joint ventures. We do a lot of programs together, as well as Rachel and Yana does programs with other organizations, so do we. So in your organization, no matter where you are, what level, think about having an event or two with other organizations. It's a great way to build camaraderie, build team spirit, build just interest, and to build volunteers. It's really volunteer based. So just think of that. If you haven't had a joint program before, it's really easy to do. Working with other people, it's actually a great experience.
Great. I just put our YouTube channel there. We also have a Buzzsprout. So if you're driving or commuting and you want to listen to any of our programs on audio, I think you can link to that through our program. So I know we didn't possibly answer everyone's particular question. I hope we gave you some guiding points to let you know that there is information, there are resources, and there are people who have dealt with these issues before. So don't worry, give us a call and we'll see what we can do to help.
Just one quick question. Do they still have the code drive for Yale 1st Gen?
Oh, the code drive? Yeah, thank you for asking that, Andrew. Yeah, when was it, 2019, we realized from the students that they don't have winter coats, and they come from various locations and they don't have the right clothes for the Northeast, and especially the winter. So working with Yale College, working with the dean's office, and working with the cultural centers, that cultural houses, we worked together and started a 1stGen Yale, I think it's called professional clothing closet. It was housed in the Asian American house. It has now been on hold because of the pandemic, but they're working to revive it. And what's been fantastic is many alumni have donated gently used, or actually many brand new clothes with tags, as well as faculty. And even President Peter Salovey donated clothes. So it's become a universal program, which is really fantastic. Clubs have had clothing drives and driven them up to the house to basically, it's a 2-room, looks like a store with racks and shelves and hangers and a dressing room and mirrors. And it's really professional. It's everything from shoes to handbags to every kind of clothing you can imagine, whether it's khakis and a sweatshirt or a professional suit, depending on what you need to wear. What's fantastic is the community initiative at Yale, which is the 1stGen low income office. They actually have students who ran and will run again fashion shows. what you need to wear, what kind of clothes you wear for interviewing, what kind of things you do. How do you shake someone's hand? And they've done wonderful events, which I've actually attended, wearing your clothes. So thank you for your clothes, not just coats, it's coats and everything else. So stay tuned and we'll be glad to let you know when that opens again. It hasn't opened yet, but thank you, Andrew.
Good question.
I have a
I also
question for
just
you
put in the
as well,
chat,
Elise,
sorry, a link to our
regarding,
organization.
sorry, can I just drop one more in?
Yeah, please
Again
go ahead,
about
sorry.
1stGen?
Oh, hi,
Yeah.
Joanne, yeah.
Regarding 1stGenYale, I was just wondering if there's any kind of orientation program for students, in the summer before they start Yale to just set some expectations and get them a little bit more acclimated.
Yes, great question. There are a lot of programs. One of the major programs is called First Year Scholars at Yale, or FSY. And that's a program we've been supporting now. We just had our 6th year, although virtually. There are 90 incoming first-gen low-income students who are the Pell Grants, who are very, very low income. They're not particularly students who are in PG years at boarding schools. These are students who are top of their class in public schools, homeschooled, parochial schools that need an extra boost. They come for 6 weeks, all expenses paid for by Yale. They're put in the college. They get to know each other. They take 2 courses, one quantitative, one qualitative. So they have a jump up in terms of their curriculum, in terms of their academic course load. And Joanne, come join us virtually or in person. It's the 3rd Saturday in July. But in addition to that, there are many programs on campus for first-gen low-income students. There's the Cultural Connections program, which is right before school starts, which is not necessarily only first-gen or low-income. It's all students, but it's for students from different cultures and different backgrounds. And there are a lot of programs. You can go to the Community Initiative website or link and see what they're doing internally. There's a weekly newsletter of all sorts of program that goes on. There's work at the Teaching and Learning Center for counseling, academic counseling. There's mental health counseling. So there are many programs, but we're involved specifically with the FSY program. Does that answer your question? Okay, thank you.
Okay, any other questions?
I just want to let people know I dropped the organizational intake form. Yana is working on developing a matching kind of not quite consulting group, something like that for nonprofits who have needs of things to try to help find experts to help you with those things, whether it's a board member or you need some marketing help. It's not a full-fledged consulting group, but we do want to be able to tap into the vast expertise in the Yale Alumni Network. And we want to be able to help nonprofits and feel like they should trust us and trust the Yale brand and the Yana brand to come to us and see if we can get you the resources that you need to execute your mission.
I was going to also just throw out, we have 2 groups, 1stGenYale. We have one in New York run by Lydia Serrano, class of 99, and another group in Washington, D.C. They're both like, I think 3 years old now after our conference, 2018. Washington is run by Yvette Rivers, who's on this today, and Barb Petrasio. We're also looking for alumni who in different cities who would like to start a 1stGenYale group. So if you're interested, give me a holler and we'd love to chat with you anywhere in the world. We'd be glad to chat about it. So we're looking for outreach and support beyond where we are. So thank you.
Yep, we're the same. We have chapters. You can look on our website, our annual reports. You can see we have chapters all over the country and the world. So if you're in a location and you want to connect with other nonprofits or people in the social impact space, let me know. Or when you sign up for our email list, you can pick the chapter you'd like to be a part of. You'll still get the general emails, but then you'll also be included in any local events and communications.
Great. So the couple of minutes that we have remaining, just to say one more thing, just the importance of pipelining. When it comes down to governance, it's all about trying to create strong pipelines. And one of the things that we all need to pay more attention to is getting more youth involved into the program. So when students are first graduating, as far as giving them the opportunity to hear about different types of opportunities, especially with not-for-profits, because once they understand the governance system better, they can become a better part of it and be more effective in the future. So as delegates, if you have any opportunities to reach out to people that may not be here, people that might be in the pipeline, maybe there are certain organizations that you're aware of that may not have representation as of yet or insufficient representation, here's a good time to try to solicit those people to try to get them into the pipeline, quote unquote. So any other questions or thoughts about that? Because if not, I would like to sincerely thank Elise and Rachel for such a wonderful presentation. Mara, obviously, for being the point of person to make sure everything came together. Elise Masterson, obviously, for helping pull together the opportunity to do this. And I wish everybody a very happy and prosperous assembly. It should be a lot of fun. The plenary that's coming up next should be very informative. And I thank you very much for sharing your time with us today, and hopefully you got a lot out of it, because I definitely did.
Thank you, everyone. This has been great. Oh, I guess.
Yeah, thank you so much, Tamara and Andrew and Lisa, as always.
Yeah, this has been great. We love doing this. Thank you for inviting us into your homes.
Thank you so much.
Be
Thanks
back.
for
if you invite us.
joining. Hopefully we'll see you guys again.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Same
we'd be
back.
glad to do that.
Sounds great.